Hi everyone, and thanks so much for hopping along on our One World video hop. I'm participating today with a handful of crafty friends and showing our support at this crazy time in our world right now. For my stop on the hop, I am giving away a $10 gift certificate to scrapbook.com, so please stay tuned to the end of the video to find out how you can win. For my card today, I'm creating a Sending Big Bear Hugs featuring Sugar Pea Designs stamp Pandamonium. I'm starting my card out by stamping out all of the images. I wasn't sure which images I wanted to use on my card, so I thought I'd stamp them all out and then pick at the end. I have a piece of Neenah's Solar White 80-pound cardstock inside my Misty, and I will be using Memento Tuxedo black ink to stamp these out. I'll ink up the images all at once, and then I can close the door of my Misty and stamp these sweet little pandas out all at once. Now these are new stamps. I did not clean them prior to using them, so I have to go back in and stamp the images out a couple of more times to get a nice crisp outline. For the coloring, I kept these pretty simple, just adding some shading to create depth since these pandas are normally black and white. I used my black Copic marker to touch up any areas that may have not stamped out all the way. And then I'm moving into adding some shading in the white areas. I'm using N3 for my darkest and then blending out with N1 and a little bit of N0. And then just blending out any harsh lines with a blender marker. And then I'm going in and adding a little bit of rosy cheeks with an R32 and blending that out with an R30. For his little hat, I colored it in using E29, E27, E25, E23, and E21. And I typically color from dark to light after I use my lightest shade to saturate the paper. And I feel like this gives me a better blend once I start layering up the darker shades. I also tend to use quite a few markers for my blends just because I really like to see that contrast between the dark and the light. But if you're interested in seeing the color combinations or some close-up pictures, I will have a link to my blog where I will share that information. So once I finish out coloring his little hat, I will move on to the bamboo stick. And for that, I'm using the same color combinations that I used for the hat. I'm just not adding as much of the dark. For this little area, I added more of the E21 and the E23 highlight colors and a lot less of the E29 and 27. And then I did go over this one a couple of times just to get a really good blend. And then finally the leaves, I've added just a couple of shades of YG colors. So moving on to creating the background, I have a piece of Bristol Smooth cardstock and I'm doing a little bit of ink blending with Salty Ocean Distress Oxide ink, and I'm using my blender brush. Once the entire panel is completely covered, I'm spritzing a little bit of water onto the panel, and then I can blot that dry with a clean paper towel. Next, for the bottom portion of my card, I'm going to be ink blending a little bit of Mowed Lawn, Distress Oxide ink, and finishing the top of that off with Twisted Citron. And then just like before, I'm going to create a little bit of texture on that panel by spritzing water and then blotting it dry with a paper towel. Once I complete those 2 panels, I'm ready to start die cutting and putting my card together. I'm using the grassy border die by Lawn Fawn to die cut the grassy portion of my card, and then I will die cut the sky portion of this card using the Mama Elephant's Sky Bursters background die. After I finish die cutting those 2 panels, I'm going to use the Sky Bursters die to die cut the edge of the grassy panel. I've lined up my panels so that I know where I need to cut the bottom portion, but not the top. Since my panel is taller than the center opening of the die, I have to align the die so that I can do partial die cutting and only die cut the bottom of the grassy panel. I hope that made sense. For the sentiment, I'm going to be using the Sending You Big Bear Hugs, and I'm stamping that out onto a piece of black cardstock. I'm treating the strip with anti-static powder, and then I will stamp the sentiment out using Versamark ink. Once it's stamped out, I can add white embossing powder and then melt it with my heat tool. So this is what I was trying to explain earlier about the partial die cutting the bottom of the grassy panel but not the top. Not only does that background die cut, but it leaves these score lines across the panel, which I wanted to have consistently throughout the entire card front. So next, I'm going to start adhering all of my components to my card base. I have the grassy hill that I've adhered to the sky background. And then I've just traced the opening of that oval onto my card base, just to know where I need to place the center in. And then I've glued that in with a little bit of liquid adhesive. I'm just checking that I've aligned it right, and please don't pay any attention to that horrible job of adding fun foam to my card. I seem to have run out of my good foam tape, and I kind of had to use what was on hand. So once I have those aligned, I will let this panel dry for a few minutes with a heavy acrylic block on top to hold it in place. And then I'm moving on to adding my little critters. So again, no foam tape, so I'm relying on the fun foam. I've added it in place where the panda needs to be popped up, and then I'm just using a little bit of liquid adhesive to glue those down. Once I had everything put together, I thought something was missing from this card. A bit of a pop of color. So in the stamp set there were these tiny little flowers. I stamped those out about a dozen or so times, and then I colored them in with an orange shade of Copic marker, and then I'm just randomly adhering those down across the entire panel. And that will complete my card. So for my giveaway, I'm curious to know how you are spending your quarantine time, or if you're in quarantine, as most everyone in the world is. I will choose the winner from all of the comments left on my video, and I will have all of that information listed below, so please check that out. As always, thank you so much for stopping by and supporting these hops by liking and commenting, and if you're new here, please consider subscribing to my channel. Thanks again for hopping along, and I'll see you next time.